So winning in business, I've heard, is 90% mental. So there's a psychology, there's a way of thinking that we ought to adopt. There's paradigms we ought to operate under if we want to be successful. Today, we're going to be diving into or picking the brain of what I consider the most successful entrepreneur ever in the financial services industry. And not just because I think that way, there is a lot of proof out there right now that back that up. And you know who I'm talking about. If you've been following this podcast, you know I'm talking about my friend, my mentor, my partner, Mr. Hubert. Humphrey. Hubert, how are you today, sir?
Doing great. Glad to be here with everybody. Excited about our subject today, especially for those that want to accomplish something really, really great.
Absolutely. Well, there is a certain mindset, and you called it a builder's mindset, because anybody building a business, right, building something great, it's got to have a certain way of thinking. So out of one of your books, I took out a page 106 where you basically point out these 8 of the many of these keys to world domination. And I like the title, Hubert Keys to World Domination, because I think everybody would like to dominate. And let's get into those things. Because, point number 1 here says, Hubert built a sustained and great base shop RMD factory. So for people that are in our business, people that are involved in the things that we're doing, and also the people that are probably doing other things, I think it can apply to them. So what do you mean by that point number 1?
All right, just for the general people listening out there, our base shop factory, you'd liken that to having your own general agency or your own brokerage. But in our deal, you run it to where you run a system whereby you're going to spin out your equal, who will spin out, and you can have many generations of those. And our comp system helps override all of it, and you're building leaders, and that's sort of what that's implying here. So what I did is I built an RMD factory system, meaning since an RMD is what we call our general agency or brokerage people, we run our base shops not just as sales agencies that are just about somebody buying leads or whatever, putting it in there. We're running it as a leadership factory. Every prospect is an RMD until proven different. There's only 2 kinds of people, RMDs or RMD trainees. So we ran it as a factory type system, and even lay out in our manual how you kind of run it as a factory system, where you bring all the raw material comes in, that's your prospects, and that leads to recruits, and the recruits come through, and the system sorts it out, and the builders do all the things that cause these leaders to stay focused on the system, which helps compound and build them into these great teams. And so that's sort of what that number 1 is implying here. And of course, that whole the keys to world domination. Just a little side note, we call our company's Hegemon Group International. Hegemon comes from the Greek word meaning dominance, to dominate, imperial dominance. And Alexander the Great's father, Philip, was known as Hegemon back in those Greek terms. And that's what we want. Since we want to build a dominant force, and we want to have domination of the nation and conquer everything at it, that's why we chose that name. Since we want to dominate, let's go build a hegemon. And that's really. It all starts at the very beginning, getting it systematized into a factory type mentality where we're building and processing, constructing leaders.
Well, since these are the keys you've used to dominate the financial industry for almost 4 decades in a row now, we want to know. And as I read these points, they kind of have this flow. They go, one after the other. So the second point is Hubert built an ever-expanding front line of strong first-generation RMDs. How can we apply that?
Well, if, as I was saying, it starts out you run your base shop as a factory. Mm-hmm. And you're recruiting wide. You got personal recruits, and then you've taproot inside the base shop. You got recruits coming in there, and they're all in the up and coming in the RMD trainee role. We have different little levels in there, but they're moving through your factory, and those that build up the production and the teams and pop out, and you're delivering. This is your baby. It's an RMD. You promote out an RMD. You're equal. That's one of your new leaders that's really proven themselves, and they now become a frontline leader running their RMD. They're doing what you did in step one. They're doing step one, running their RMD factories direct to you. And so that's what's happening there. And you build you're an ever expanding group. I had 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And I went through and I literally built it more than 100 wide over the years back in my day. But it's to sort it down to 8 or 10 to 12 really strong ones. Mm-hmm. So it's, again, that law of averages. And so I've always believed in the law of high numbers makes the law of averages profitable. So I didn't want to wait. Time is money. And I didn't want to go out there and say, I've got me 10 or 12. Hopefully these are the 10 or 12. I couldn't risk it. So I had to put a lot in there so that somewhere in there was 10 or 12. I just didn't know who they were until the system sorted them out.
Sure, and that's I guess you were also talking to point number 3 here, which is Hubert produced 8 to 10 direct giant executive field chairman. I know you give that title, and the language here is really speaking to those of us who are involved in the current company, right? But for an average person who needs to build something big, they've got to have this sort of mindset to produce 8 to 10 great leaders. Now, how do you produce them? What do you mean that Hubert produced 8 to 10?
Well, it's because I did step 1 and step 2, and that and those people were the seeds of those 8 to 10 really really great ones, and there were 30 or 40 that were better than pretty strong, and then there were 20 or 30 that were medium, and then there were a few that were just smaller guys that just treated it as it made lesser money, but they were satisfied. They were making their so-called dreams come true. So all we can do is give people a chance. But so that's me producing them. I ran the system, and the system produced the people. Is really the
Good
way
point.
it should read. And as far as the title goes, that was just a title. We had a different title for what they were in art when we built A.L. Williams Primerica, when we built WMA, WFG. It's the same system and the same kinds of leaders. Sometimes the titles are different, but just you're producing professional agencies, leaders who are master general agents who are running their own sub agencies, and here in our system, instead of it all staying in one super duper deal, we're building our equals. And we have a compensation program that allows people to not be held back. See, most comp plans, some guys got the big contract, and you'll never get that contract with that company with this guy here. The only thing you can do is be subservient to it, or you can go try to talk that company into giving you a contract, which they probably won't do, or you leave him and go somewhere else and get some other companies to give you a contract, and he's lost his people. Our comp plan is designed for you to build your equal, and when they break away from your base shop factory and they're running their own business within a business, we have a compensation program that it gives you those generational overrides and even some infinity overrides. So it's kind of like you got a business saddle on your horse when he comes out of your barn and he goes out on his own. You can ride him and override him whatever he's doing, wherever he's going. You don't lose him. You see in most businesses, if you were running a successful hair salon, you train your people, and your very best stylist realizes that at some point that they know everything, they know what to do, and they're not going to be able to get your spot. And they're going to probably go out and open their own, and they're going to go open your own, and you're not going to have anything. It's the best. I had a good friend that ran way back in Macon, ran for Thorpe. There was a company called Thorpe down there, a big department store, and he had a men's clothing store in there. And this guy was their number one guy. George Boyd was their number one guy for years in there for sales. Well, he finally got so good and had so much clientele, and they wouldn't promote him to manager and the head of that deal. He goes over 2 or 3 blocks away and opens up his own store and builds one of the big successful clothing stores down in Macon, Georgia, was because they didn't make a nickel off of him. And so you have in traditional business, you train your equal. You can't train them too good because they could be your competition. In our deal, you train them very good, and you never lose your people. I don't mean you don't ever lose them, but bottom line is that they're financially incented to stay with you, and you're always going to have a little piece of it, but they've got everything that you've got and a bigger opportunity than you had.
And that point right there is such a critical one. I want to invite everybody to go and look for a previous podcast named The Power of Compensation Plans, where Hubert goes deeper into that concept. But also point number 4 in the keys to world domination is Hubert has always been a master motivator. Super team run on high octane motivation. So elaborate, please.
Well, since you've been a motivator, all I've ever done is I've tried to be a director of motivation. To be a great motivator means that it's all coming from me. I was just a railroad conductor wanting to be somebody. I mean, I trained to be a great motivator. I found a great system and plugged it into a great opportunity with art in that beginning with those 30 people, and between the timing, the market window that was open, and the great crusading message and products and my knowledge of a system and my hunger and desire and Art's hunger and desire, we plugged it in, and he had the crusade and I had the team building machine, and those two twin engines blew this thing away. But so all of that was the great motivator. We ran that system, but I've got to make you understand. You've got to have that director of motivation mentality, because it's one thing to recruit people, it's another thing to build teams. You've got to be able to be constantly thinking about how can I get their vision stretched. I've got to direct them to the events. I got to direct events to them. I got to get tools, books, tapes, programs, podcasts, whatever I can do. That's it's got to be selected. It's got to fit their deal. You can't just send them out and say, "Oh, go get a bunch of books, go listen to a bunch of tapes." They'll get all screwed up. But you direct good things to them, and them to good things, and let them go through these emotional experiences and help stretch their vision. The word should be. Hubert ran a system whereby people's vision were stretched and their hearts were energized with thoughts and power, and it was systemized where we could keep doing it at all levels. An irrigation system, which is all that is you're a farmer doing an irrigation system. You're out trying to get positive, motivational, vision stretching things to everybody. A great irrigation system for a farmer must get to the very last row, to the very last row of corn, to the very last stalk of corn on that row, or it wasn't a good irrigation system. So that's what you're running. You're running a giant motivational irrigation system here to keep moving people. It's one thing to build, another thing to move.
Key things, and I want to basically, put a spotlight on the fact that he said director of motivation, because a lot of people could misunderstand this. They say, I'm not a great motivator. I could never be a great motivator. I am so introverted. He says director of motivation, which is leading the people to where they get the motivation. But to be very careful where you're leading the people to. That's why you've got to be aligned with the system and people who's been already done or have achieved the level of success that you're trying to achieve and more. You're talking about stirring emotions, moving emotions. People want to change when there is some emotional event in their lives. It stretches their vision. These are powerful stuff, guys.
Most of the people, Mauricio, that if I look back over the last 40 years in all our various companies, our biggest guys on their own were left to their own devices would be kind of shy kind of people. They weren't extroverted. They weren't introverted, but they weren't extroverted. They weren't the great speakers. Now they could speak and do what they had to do, but it wasn't their normal deal. They let the system help empower them, and they used the power of the team and this stuff I call Mozone that it helps. It enables guys like me. I mean, I was never a great speaker. Not that I'm a great speaker now. I got a southern drawl. I still, talk funny to some people. But I've gained enough knowledge and power that the words I put out are have power and meaning to them because there's moral authority to what I say. Mm-hmm. It's the value of your words, not the inflection of your voice all the time, or how you look, or all the aesthetics around you. It's what moves people, That's what that's meaning there. It just means that we high octane motivation is high octane things that move people. Sometimes just a little extra know-how when you need some knowledge about something can make you move. Sometimes it's encouragement when you're discouraged. Sometimes just hearing great news about other people that moves you. Sometimes it's seeing success. Sometimes it's being recognized and motivated and given a reward on a stage. Or sometimes it's just hearing powerful words come out of a person's mouth that's opening some keys, that's opening up your mind with the next great thing you need to hear. All of that's part of this motivation.
All right. Number 5 is Hubert has always mastered constant personal communication. I think this one's critical. We can wrap it up with this one and maybe do a part 2 of the keys to world domination. But let's wrap it up with this number 5, which is Hubert has always mastered the constant communication art, technique.
Well, I talked a little bit about it right then, but to me, besides the big events and the big things and all that you got to do, it's those day-to-day things that you do. To me, some of the greatest motivation you'll ever do is to let people know you care. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. It's letting them know you care. It's staying at. I mean, I'm always having little letters going out to all the people when they hit certain on the bulletins or they do certain things or some milepost, and just the fact that I've sent something out means so much to somebody. And I know how it meant to me when I'd get a letter from Art or somebody would recognize me for anything coming up the ladder. It moved me, and it didn't take me long to realize that if I felt that way, what will these other people feel? So I learned it, and then I learned in my own family. Just your children. All they want is your time. All they want is you just recognize. Sometimes we get so busy in business, and we're building this business for our children that they don't even know that they think on a daily basis we might not recognize who they are. We might not love them. Just kind words. It's like if you got a dog. If all the dog wants you to do is just come pat him on the head a few times, rub his belly or something. Just I just want to know somebody knows I'm alive and somebody does care about me and paid me a little attention. That's the greatest way to be a director of do this constant personal communication. CPC.
Yeah.
You know, and as I said, motivation is powerful with different things, events and tools and books and podcasts and things that you can energize people and they can see a lot of excitement. But encouragement to somebody when they're discouraged is probably the most powerful of all, because if you got somebody who's discouraged and you can come in there and get them to start believing again and start reminding them, you loan them your belief in them. That's the number one thing. You say, look, man, I see you're struggling, but if you could see yourself in the light that I see you, you'd be so pumped up. I see you as a superstar, and you're down here thinking that you're losing. You're not losing. You're in the process of winning. And I remind them sometimes that the road to success goes right through the city dump. Sometimes it doesn't smell so good along the way, and it looks so pretty, but en route to something great. And before you can be great, you got to learn how to be good. Before you can be good, you got to learn how to be bad. And before you can be bad, you got to go out and do something and fail a little bit. And so you're going through the things that all successful people. That's the kind of thing they need. And then good news. People always want to know what's going on. What's going on? What's the great news? And then people want to know how. Somewhere along the line, they strategically got to know skills to sell, how to overcome objections. Whatever it is that they need to have, they need to get that knowledge base in there. And then of course the whole thing is helping to make constant course corrections. You can't just let people be off roaming around, because if you don't know they're off course, they don't know they're off course, you don't know they're off course, and the longer you stay off course, the harder it is to get back on course, and the more time is wasted, the more fuel is wasted. It's like that Apollo 11 we constantly talk about. Yep. They were off course 90% of the time, but they landed on the moon. The secret, when they blasted off, they had X amount of fuel. They had to go leave Earth, go to the moon, and come back with a certain finite amount of fuel that was involved in that mission. And if they got off course a bunch of times, too many times, it got too far off course, it took too long to keep getting back, they'd have burned up all the fuel that they never got there, or if they got there, they'd have never got back. So it's constant course correction, so don't waste time and effort and energy, and you got to stay in touch with them. The word's constant. It's got to be a systematic way of staying in touch with people. So the people that succeed in this type of business are the caring people. Because if this is a labor of love, you'll win. If you don't like people and you don't like to be around them and you don't want to do all this sort of stuff, you can recruit a few and you can give them a contract, you can get them some money and let the system, and you can make good money and not even be a good people person. I know a bunch of people that do. But if you're going to be great, you're going to love the people. You know, I love them. I mean, it's the fountain of youth for me. So anyway. That's
I'll tell you here. I've seen you. I've watched you. How you do this, constant personal communication, and I experienced it over the past few years, and I just hope that people are putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Everything that we're sharing on this podcast is golden if we're really trying to build something big. And this last part that Hubert just talked about, I can tell you, I've seen it, how it works in people, how it worked in myself. And sometimes when you don't believe in yourself, just somebody else recognizing and seeing the potential in you that sometimes you don't see yourself could make the world of a difference. That could be that little spark that ignites the great future in somebody.
Hey, Mauricio,
knowing that somebody really cares.
Let me say what you just said is like a giant puzzle. And if you went and bought a new puzzle box, and my wife loves puzzles, some of my daughters, they love puzzles, and I watch them. They go buy a big old box. It's got a big beautiful picture on the box, and they lay that picture out there, and they dump all these pieces out, and they keep that image of what it's supposed to look like, and they got to go and find each piece, and they'll try this piece, it won't work. This tries, it will fit. But eventually they get all the pieces together, and it ends up being a beautiful, beautiful picture. And
exactly.
And every one of these little things is a piece of a puzzle of a very successful you with a super team, making all the money you want to make, making your dreams come true. And all these little things we're giving you here are great little pieces. And if you can get, but as you get them all kind of put together, that's why you need to keep up with this stuff. Don't just listen to it for entertainment. Listen to it and have it compartmentalized and pull back up and study and because these are pieces of a beautiful puzzle of the rest of your life.
Yeah, I look at a lot of people tuning into information, which is there's nothing wrong with it, like how to make money on Bitcoin and how am I do this, and that's all great information. But these are the basics. These are the fundamental principles to really building something big, because these are evergreen principles that'll make you successful no matter many market conditions and things like that. That's the way I look at it, Hubert. That's how I take it.
And the rest of the story will come here soon. Okay.
Absolutely. Before we wrap it up today, I do want to remind you, as always, to go check out the HGI opportunity, because it's the best opportunity in America, period. If you're looking for that one vehicle, you know how we always say, and we always hear that it depends the vehicle that we are on that can take us to where we want to go as fast as we want to go there. Well, there's a lot of different vehicles out there that you can, hop on and go. But if you want to be involved in the best opportunity, meaning the best vehicle that can get you to where you want to go the fastest, well, you need to check out the Hegemon Group International Opportunity by going to hgiopportunity.com. There is a full presentation that is going to shed light into what the opportunity is really all about. So do yourself a favor. Go right now to hgiopportunity.com. Listen to the whole thing, and you'll thank me later. Hubert, thank you so much for all the value you every day bring to us. We'll see you tomorrow for the final episode of this week. Take care, everybody. We'll see you soon.
See you later.
Warning, this podcast may change the way you think about business, entrepreneurship, and money forever. The Conquistador Podcast was created for dreamers, entrepreneurs, and leaders who want to conquer their future. To be an epic entrepreneur, you must adopt the right mental paradigms as well as master the art of selling, marketing, and finance.